Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, and before I get started, at the end of the video, we talk about the best pick of the week from the viewers, so in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured. Also, be sure to like this video, comment all your thoughts on your comics, because that also helps the channel. Now, this week I had a ton of comics. I had 18 books, and there was a lot of issue ones, so I want to cover those and talk about which issue ones were worth it. So let's jump in. Number 18 is actually an issue one for me, and that is Red Hood issue one. This is a follow-up to Batman Hush, which feels like it's never going to end. I heard whispers, I think the next issue is coming out in January, and that's the penultimate issue to the ending. So to have a series that's a spin-off to Batman Hush feels weird because it's not over yet. And for me, I'm just not a huge Red Hood fan as a solo character. I like when he interacts with other characters. This issue is just kind of boring for me. That's the best way to put it. It's not a bad issue. I just never felt hooked to it. I'll even say I thought the art was really good for this book. I just couldn't sink my teeth into it. So give me that 2 stars, and that is number 18. Moving on to number 17. Another Bat book, and that's Absolute Batman issue 12. I'm sure other people will disagree with me on this one, but I just feel like the series has kind of slowed down in the regard of character work. I really love seeing Bruce's family. I enjoyed seeing his relationship with Alfred. There's some inklings and some teases that we're going to get to see a little bit with him and Catwoman. I am excited for the potential of that, but mostly this is glimpses at what's going to happen, right? We get to see Two-Face, we get to see Killer Croc, Riddler, little pieces of them and what they're going to be, but it doesn't feel like a full story to me. So that's kind of what took me out of it, because there's other aspects of this book I really enjoy, like Bruce's mom. She was the best part here, because she is the character that is so different from the rest of them, and I feel like they've been underutilizing her. But I am interested in the Catwoman ending, so we'll see how they bring that together in the next issue. So giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 17. Moving on to number 16, which is Birds of Prey, issue 25. This is definitely more connecting to what the arcs were in the beginning of the series, which makes sense because this is an anniversary type issue. I just like it when they're kind of just having fun, which I liked in this issue when they're all dressing up as different characters and we get to see Black Canary as a blue version of Green Arrow. I had fun with that. That's when I think this title shines the most, is when it's just about the characters interacting. But I do think it kind of delved a little bit more into its own mythos, and there's like reverse characters of them that kind of took me out of it. And I thought the artwork could have been stronger here. There has been stronger artwork with this series. So giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 16. Moving on to number 15, another DC book. I guess DC had a pretty low week, and that's Trinity issue 4. This is a weird book for me because I don't think it's bad. I actually think there's some elements here that are interesting. I like Alfred's relationship, Wonder Woman's daughter, and seeing the younger version of her. The part I didn't like, as someone who read all of Tom King's Batman, is revisiting the wedding, which is definitely not a part of Batman's history I think a lot of people like from Tom King's run, so for them to go back to it was a strange choice to me. I just feel like it's a very whimsical book that's something I can't really get myself into. It does feel very YA, but to a level that it's talking to a younger audience than an all ages element. Like I'll talk about another series I think does the YA element a little bit better. So overall, I'm giving this one 2.5 stars. There's still a part of me that wants to continue to pick it up because there's an interesting story here. I like some of the other pieces of the Wonder Woman's daughter too, but I just can't get into the whimsy as much, and I just didn't love the revisiting of the wedding. So giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 15. Moving on to number 14, which is Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion issue 4. It's just a book that is not exactly what I expected. I didn't hate this issue. I think the interaction between that character Mel and Miles was interesting. I believe she's from the Ultimate X-Men book, but a problem is that I'm not reading Ultimate Wolverine or Ultimate X-Men, so it's just not doing much for me personally. So if you like those titles, I think you're gonna get a lot more out of it. I just was expecting a little bit more of an impact to the Ultimate Universe, an impact to Spider-Man in particular, and I'm not really getting that with this series. So overall, giving it 3 stars. Again, not a bad issue, just not exactly what I thought the series was going to be. Moving on to number 13, we're moving on to another issue 1, and that is the Undead Iron Fist issue 1. I feel like this is very much written for the Iron Fist fan. I don't think this is going to make you an Iron Fist fan. As someone who is kind of an outsider to Iron Fist besides the TV show and the little I picked up throughout reading Marvel Comics, I liked the return. I liked his character, but when it delved into the mythos, that's kind of when it lost me, and I'm like, okay, this is for another type of fan. Maybe I'll get issue 2 if it's a week where it's smaller, but as you can see, there's 18 books here. You kind of have to make some cuts. So I don't know if it did enough for me as someone who doesn't know as much about Iron Fist to get that next issue. So giving that 3 stars, and that was number 13. Moving on to number 12, which is another issue 1, a Marvel issue 1. That's the Punisher Red Band issue 1. I was really, really excited for this. I've enjoyed Ben Percy's writing. I also really like Otta as an artist. I remember back in the day when he did Betty Page for Dynamite. I've really enjoyed his art, and I'm glad to see him more at Marvel. And, you know, I think this is a very straightforward story. It's Punisher having no memory, there's violence, and Kingpin is controlling him, it seems like. And that's the whole issue. It's a setup to that. I think the Red Band aspect I don't love from Marvel because it's usually not that much more bloody than a regular Marvel comic. If you were selling me Ryan Ottley's artwork from Invincible, I'd be like, Red Band, perfect, this is great. But it just doesn't feel that much more violent than you normally have. And maybe they have the camera angle a little lower than they usually would, but it's not that much of a Red Band book. And like I said, it's a pretty to by the numbers book. But I'll say for Punisher fans, maybe that's what you've been looking for. They've been reinventing this character a lot, which I particularly did like as someone who wasn't as interested in Punisher. But if you're just looking for the violent Punisher you knew and loved, that's kind of what this book is going to bring you. I will say, unlike Iron Fist, though, this did give me enough for another issue because I like the cliffhanger. I want to see where this Kingpin thing goes. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 13, I believe. That was number 12. Moving on to number 11, which is Supergirl, issue 5. It's your fun Super Pets issue, which I didn't know how to feel about. I'm usually not a huge fan of the Super Pets style of storytelling, but I liked how it weaved in with the other characters, Lena and Kara and Kara's new friend or T-friend. You get to see how the pets interact with them, and there's a really good cliffhanger with Supergirl collapsing and something happening to her. So even though it was like a fun filler issue, they did the filler issue in a cool way. So giving that one 3 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is Radiant Black, issue 37. I really like the parts when the book is grounded. I like Marshall's date and him talking about the Blade movie that comes out in this world and obviously not in our world. I really enjoyed that. I like the cliffhanger where we're seeing this kind of anti-Radiant Black, where it's not a reboot, but kind of a relaunch of the character. So I thought that commentary is really interesting about this new Radiant Black character. And that's all towards the second half of the issue. The first half is more of those other characters. I think his name's like Slide or something. We get to see that side of the mythos is where I felt like when Radiant Black was kind of losing me before the relaunch, they focused a lot on that. And I'm like, all right, I kind of want to get back to the meat of these characters and the core of these characters. And I think the later half of this issue did that. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, which is Superman, the Kryptonite Spectrum, issue 2. Issue 1 was a little higher for me for this, but I still had a really good time with it. I like seeing just how the kryptonite affects Superman. It does feel a lot like the Superman movie, so if you like the tone of that movie, you get it, especially with Lex Luthor. I feel like that is really played with here. And I also just like seeing Metropolis reacting to Superman as kind of these bad things are happening to him as he grows larger and becomes mean, and seeing how all the kryptonite affects him. It's a really fun kind of Silver Age feeling book. Excited to see where it ends up going. So give me that 3.5 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8, which is Feral, issue 16. I'll say I was really looking forward to the setting, but the setting is actually not the part I thought was most interesting here. I really liked the setup to the end, I'll say. I don't know if I love this group of new cats where they're like, okay, we're gonna kill you, but the aftermath of that's interesting. Our character is just being told that they're going to die just because, and then these other creatures that are the zombie animals coming in and barging into the setting I thought was more interesting than this new group themselves. But I do like how Walking Dead it is. Like, it feels like a Walking Dead premise except with cats, and especially this issue felt like that with this new group introduced and being weary of this new group. So I liked it. I think there's definitely a good amount of meat here, but again, I didn't know how to feel about the group as I was reading it. I kind of just wanted to focus more on our cats. So giving that 3.5 stars, and then is number 8. Moving on to number 7, which is another issue 1. Again, there's a ton of issue 1s that came out. So that's Murder Podcast issue 1. This is by a new company, Ignition Press. They've been doing a lot of cool stuff with different mediums. We have them having a TV show coming up with The Beauty. A lot of Kickstarters have been coming out, and then also doing the direct market, which I think is really cool to kind of balance all that and get different audiences. And this one is about a murder podcast. It's about a podcast that's, you know, your classic murder podcast that, except when you listen to it, it makes you murder people. And I like the way they introduced the female characters here and the group of people that, you know, will probably be in this murder podcast murdering group. I thought that was interesting. And I think they, again, introduced those characters in a way where like, okay, I kind of want to learn more about them. I thought the creepiness of them being controlled, or the characters that do end up getting controlled by the murder podcast, was interesting, and the tension was built well. I thought the artwork was really solid. I think it's a book with a lot of potential if you enjoy horror stories, and it has an interesting real life twist to it. So giving that one 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, you guys are going to be surprised, and that is Exceptional X-Men issue 13 is the last issue for now. What frustrates me a little bit with this book is that you could tell the legs were cut off to a really, really cool arc, because this new event that I don't think anyone really asked for is happening, and that's the frustrating part of the big 2 in general, is when you have a really good momentum with your favorite book happening, and then an event interrupts it because everything has to tie into it. I was a little frustrated by that with this issue, because I do feel like there's stuff that weren't tied together. There's Kitty's girlfriend. They had that open-ended conversation. That's never resolved. I think the conversation between Kitty and her students were really good, but I wanted to build to it a little bit better. I just felt like it was a little quick, but I liked a lot of elements of this issue. I really enjoyed seeing Kitty reflect on her past. I love seeing her students grow. I love this cast. I really like the art. So that was kind of the conflict for me, because I really enjoyed reading the issue. I just felt like it could have been an even bigger arc, and it seemed like it was going to be a bigger planned arc. So overall, giving that one 3.5 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which this one skyrocketed to the top here, and that's Green Lantern Corps, issue 8. I like the whole event coming to a head. I really feel like these books do a good job at tag teaming what stories they're going to tell between Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps. I like seeing more of Carol's ex-fiance play a part here. I do wish that his turn didn't happen so quickly. He kind of just looks at Carol and Hal and be like, you know what? They do deserve to be together. I wish that wasn't as quick, but I love the emotional element because of him. I love seeing all the fight pieces here, the set pieces. It leads into an interesting, bigger story for the Green Lantern Corps and the rest of the Corps. So I just like the action, and I like that there's some emotion injected with that action. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. All right, moving on to number 4, another issue 1, and that is C.O.R.T. issue 1. So this is kind of an indie book, kind of not. It's a Tom Taylor creator-owned book, and Daniele, who worked on their book from Boom Studios, same creative team, kind of same vibe, now doing a DC book that is creator-owned, but not Vertigo. So interesting play there. But I was really pleasantly surprised by this. It is very YA, and that's what I was talking about. I think there's some YA books that are so directed to kids and kind of talks down to kids, and I feel like this book didn't do that. I think it did a good job, but anyone could enjoy this kind of fun adventure with these teens who just so happen to get these swords by the knights of King Arthur, and I had a fun time with it. I thought they introduced the characters well, introduced the world well. It's grounded, fun. The coloring and the art style was really bright and cheery, and also you have a good cliffhanger to be like, okay, where is this going? And I just thought it was a good setup to the rest of the series. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 4. So moving on to number 3, and that is Power Rangers Prime issue 10. I really liked how this issue dug into the character even more, the Black Ranger, and his conflict with his people, with his mom and his dad in particular, as he's also a Power Ranger and wants to save his friend. And you get to see the budding romance between one of the other Power Rangers that he's with. And yeah, I just thought it was a really well-balanced issue. The art was good, and I just liked that internal struggle to kind of build this world and these conflicts even bigger. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 3. All right, moving on to number 2, which is not an issue 1, but it is a news story, and then kind of, it's also a Substack story, and that's Spectators, the OGN. I normally don't review graphic novels here because they're usually pretty long and I read all my books in one day, but I love Brian K. Vaughan and I do want to pick up more graphic novels when I can. I've been looking forward to reading this story altogether. Now, I've been subscribed to his Substack, so I've seen pieces of this story, but I never really read it all the way through. And what I really liked about the book was that I read this actually digitally to read this first, and then I looked through the book to see, like, how did they do this panel? And I thought it was really interesting how the digital version was different than the physical version, especially with some of the panels that were repeated. They adapted it really well to the physical version and made it scrolling really interestingly for the digital version. So I like that, and I enjoyed the full story and its commentary about being a spectator, right? The story is about this woman who dies after a shooting, and now she's a ghost. But even in real life, she was a spectator. We get to see how her sex life was before she died. We get to see just how she observed life. And now as a ghost, we see that as well. It's again, it's a very saga way where it's a not safe workbook, but it brings in character work really well and builds the themes really well, which I feel like leans more into Paper Girls, especially the stuff they talk about. Again, the sex aspect of it, I feel like they took more of a saga approach to it, but then there's a big commentary about technology and how we interact with technology, which was such a big part of Paper Girls. So you get to see some repeated themes of maybe your favorite Brian K. Vaughan books in a new light. And obviously it's OGN, so something with Paper Girls, it's 30 issues, you can kind of live with these characters a bit more. I think that's my one nitpick, is I kind of want to live with these characters more, have more of those kind of lost episodes to learn more about them. But I think it did a good job at seeing these characters' view on, and I guess our world's view on violence and how we see the world. And I thought there was a really interesting scene, which obviously it's a conversation that many people have had, where she was a little kid and they were watching Terminator, and anytime a sexual scene came up, it's like, oh, close your eyes. And then a violent scene came up, it's like, oh yeah, you could watch that. And I think there was a really interesting commentary about that in this series, as we get to see these characters learn more about each other, because there's another ghost person she's interacting with as they get kind of closer and closer to each other, because they both dealt with violence and dealt with trauma, and how that violence and trauma brought them closer together, which I thought was an interesting commentary too. So I just really enjoyed the themes here, and if you're looking for a great Brian K. Vaughan story, if you already like his writing, this is going to be very similar to the other series that he has done. So putting that as number 2, and it's cool that we get to see a Substack book now in physical media. Now moving on to number 1, which is an issue 1, so kind of playing with the theme here, and it killed everybody but me. Mad Cave published this as issue 1. One of my favorite writers, Ryan Parrott, is behind it. I loved it. I really love slasher books, and I especially love slasher stories that can kind of reinvent themselves, which it's a genre that happens a good bit. Obviously, we have Scream, you have your Halloweens, your Psychos, and how we get to see them develop over the years, and how The Final Girl has developed over the years. And I enjoyed the mystery here, because that's kind of what's fun about a slasher too. Also, obviously, the female drivenness of a slasher, that's always what has made me enjoy slasher so much growing up, is like, oh, I finally get to see what you think as a vulnerable character, see a woman in power, because she gets to fight back, and especially in a lot of the modern slashers. And that's something I liked here, is it's very much in her point of view. And I like the kind of mystical point of view you get towards the end. You're like, okay, here's the mystery that they're kind of building of who's this killer, how's she involved? And you obviously see the PTSD that she's dealing with after she went through this event. And I like that's all pretty much from the point of view of the future. So you're guessing with her. It's like, okay, so what did happen that night? Like, are you involved? Were you a bad person? Why were you covered in blood? Were you just fighting back? So there's a lot of questions here, and she seems to know a lot because of that ending with the mystical characters. So I loved how the mystery was built. I really liked the world that was built, and if you love slashers, I definitely think you should check this one out. I gave that 4.5 stars. That's my pick of the week. Let me know in the comments below what your pick of the week was, and last week's pick of the week was Sisterhood, issue 3, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.